Welcome to this channel's first ever Godzilla marathon, kickstarting with the original film on the King of the Monsters' birthday. Yes, November 3rd is officially Godzilla Day. In this film review, we will not only be covering the plot, but also the monster's origins, the special effects, and the significance of the film during its era, and the genre as a whole. This is Godzilla 1954. The film begins with a series of fishing vessels disappearing into the Pacific, leading a group of reporters to the site of the wreckage, Oto Island, where its inhabitants share with them the myth of Godzilla, a sea monster from the island's folklore, who is established as the one responsible for the shipwrecks. Suddenly, a storm strikes the island and the monster attacks the village. As an audience, we don't see the monster, not yet at least. After hearing their pleas, the government sends investigators to the island, including a paleontologist named Dr. Yamane. They discover large footprints filled with radiation, leading them and the audience to their first visual on the monster. Godzilla was the brainchild of producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, special effects director Eiji Tsuburaya, director Shiro Honda, and screenwriter Shigeru Kayama. Godzilla's name, known in Japan as Gojira, is an amalgamation of the Japanese words gorilla and whale. A long-known rumor was that the monster was named after a strongman who worked on the Batlock studios of Toho. However, the wife of the film's director debunked it as being a joke made by backstage employees. The true story behind Godzilla's name is still something that's debated to this day. There's no clear evidence that tells us whether it was actually someone working in the studios with that nickname, or it was an idea that came off between the four creators. Initially, the monster was going to be a gorilla-whale mutation, but after taking inspiration from King Kong and the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Godzilla was then established as being an amphibious dinosaur irritated by nuclear radiation. Art director Akira Watanabe and Teizo Toshimitsu designed Godzilla as being an amalgamation of well-known dinosaurs, particularly a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus with the dorsal fins on its back. To emphasize its atomic origin, Godzilla's skin was based on the keloid scars inflicted on the survivors of the bombing of Hiroshima. Not to mention, he has an atomic breath that melts and burns anything it comes in contact with. His iconic roar was created by the film's composer, Akira Ifukube, who used a contrabass by loosening its strings and rubbing them with a leather glove, then recorded and played it at reduced speed. Tsuburaya initially wanted Godzilla to be made through stop motion, but at the time it was too expensive and time-consuming to work on a stop-motion film. Therefore, Godzilla was brought to life through a different type of style, a costume, a guy in a rubber suit to be specific. Stuntman Haruo Nakajima was the first to portray Godzilla, and he kept playing the King of the Monsters through the first generation of Godzilla films, all the way to 1972. The special effects from Godzilla gave birth to a new subgenre in the Japanese film industry, the Daikaiju Eiga, the giant monster film. This genre started around the same time as the Atomic Age of monsters, but in contrast to the West, Japan's kaiju genre boomed all beyond the 50s, straight into contemporary era as of right now, all thanks to Toho and Godzilla, keeping the genre alive. According to director Shiro Honda, Godzilla is a metaphor for nuclear destruction, more specifically the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the later half of the film, where the monster wreaks havoc on Tokyo, we see as an audience the amount of destruction he creates. This is not your typical B-movie filled with cheesy dialogue or monster fights. This isn't your regular Godzilla film. It's a disaster film. A disaster film filled with sorrow and fear. We see civilians get destroyed as the city ignites on fire. There's a mother attempting to calm her children as the city's walls fall onto them. In the aftermath of the attack, there's a hospital scene filled with the survivors being tested for radiation. There's a daughter literally losing her mother. And its followed with a choir of schoolchildren singing for the dead. This film treats the plot of Godzilla, more or less the monster, as if it were an atomic bomb that was dropped on Tokyo. It's technically a reminder of how Pandora's box was opened in Japan in 1945, with the droppings of the atomic bombs. There's a subplot in the film that involves a scientist named Zerazawa, who invents an experimental device known as the Oxygen Destroyer. The film's protagonists try to convince the doctor to use it on Godzilla. Eventually, he relents, but destroys all of his research in the process. The film ends with Godzilla being reduced to bones thanks to this weapon, but at the cost of Dr. Zerazawa's life, as he goes down with him. Dr. Yamane then makes a remark.
もし水爆実験が続けて行われるとしたら、あのゴジラの同類がまた世界のどこかへ現れてくるかもしれない。
And he for sure wasn't wrong. The premiere of Godzilla in Japan was met with mixed criticism, with some of the critics arguing that the film exploited on the tragedies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the West, however, the film ended up getting acclaimed. It was edited in 1956 and retitled Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters, alive, surging up from the depths of the sea on a tidal wave of terror to wreak vengeance.
Dubbed in English and featuring Canadian actor Raymond Burr playing a US reporter named Steve Martin. The plot has mostly remained the same. It just features an American, or I would say a Canadian, narrating the events of the film, with lesser nuclear themes and a shorter running time.
A prehistoric monster the Japanese call Godzilla has just walked out of Tokyo Bay. I can hardly believe what has just happened. Now it seems Tokyo has no defense.
Fun fact, actor James Hong did the dubbing for Dr. Zerazawa and Captain Ogata, one of the main protagonists. Thanks to the positive reception it received in the United States, Japan ended up looking back at Godzilla in a more positive light, to the point that by the time the Japanese Film Awards started going on, it won the category for Best Special Effects. It nearly won the category for Best Picture, losing to Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. Overall, I think this is by far the strongest of the Godzilla films, given that it's the first one to ever be made. It pioneered all the special effects we see in the films today. It left a large legacy in both the kaiju genre and the film industry as a whole on an international level. For those of you who are looking to get into the franchise, I highly recommend you watch the original 1954 version. For all of you watching this video, stay tuned. More Godzilla reviews are more to come as we head down to the first generation of Godzilla films, reviewing the ones from the mid-50s to the mid-70s.